So about half the kids were boarders. We built 3 cabins and they were boarding there. And that, you know, that was a big issue here in the atoll. There were a lot of the old timers didn't, you know, it tends to be insular. We don't want a bunch of teenagers coming in and causing all kinds of trouble. So we didn't have much money, and but we were determined to do this school, and some of the old timers got their lawyers up and they were threatening to close us down, you know, because we didn't have any permits or anything like that. Or they'd say they were coming down and I'd write them back saying, oh, we're so glad you're coming to help. Maybe you can bring some shovels because we really do need a lot of help, which wasn't what they were planning to come down for. After a couple of years of this, they decided, okay, this is it. We're going to really bust Petrolia High School. So they all came down. The fire marshal, the state fire marshal was here, and the building department guy was here, and the planning department guy was here. And they came down to evaluate the place. The Petrolia Volunteer Fire Department, the head of that, came. So we're going around and they're looking at all this stuff. And, you know, first the fire marshal goes around and he says, well, you don't have any smoke alarms here. And then the health inspector looks at the kitchen and says, well, this just, you know, you need a hood, nothing here works. And so they finish all that. And we're standing around and, you know, they're sort of, you know, they're like this, like, boy, we got these guys over the barrel now. And there was a raffle. They were raffling off was a .357 Magnum, big gun, right? And so I'm down there at the store, and I see this thing and said, oh, you know, I'll buy a bunch of tickets to support Dan, you know. And Denise says, well, I thought you were a pacifist, which I am. I'm a conscientious objector and a pacifist. And he says, well, you know, I don't think there should be guns. I said, well, yeah, I am, but I figured if I win, I'll throw it in the ocean. One less gun, right? And I won. So, and it turns out I just recently won it, but I hadn't gotten it yet. And the guy who had donated the gun was the Petrolia Volunteer Fire Department chief, a guy named Jim Longnecker. And so I spoke up. I said, say, Jim, I said, you know that .357 Magnum I won? And, you know, these bureaucrats perked up their ears when they heard that, right? And he said, Jim talks kind of funny. It's funny, his name is Jim Longnecker, and he's got this long neck, and somehow the words, they start down, but by the time they come, oh yeah. That's the way he talked. He said, oh yeah, I got it. I said, yeah, you know, you won that fair and square, it's yours. I said, yeah, I'd like to pick it up. He said, oh yeah, you just come by and pick it up. But he said, but I heard you were going to throw it in the ocean. And I said, well, Jim, I am, but I thought I might use it once or twice. They never came back. I realized that everything here is just going to, eventually it's all going to be back to just trees and this is going to float away one of these days. And that's why it's an ark. It's supposed to float down the river and then out to sea.
When you get home, standing in the doorway, kind of slumped against the frame, she will look up from the table. Will she laugh or will she cry? There's always time.